So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miss Caroline. I'm one of the distance learning specialists here at the Liberty Science Center. If it's your first time joining us today, I just want to let you know that the Liberty Science Center is located in Jersey City, New Jersey. We're right outside New York City, so not too far away. And today we're going to be learning all about bones. So I said while we're waiting for some more friends to join us and get started, I want you to pick a name for our skeleton friend. He's going to be our model today, and we're going to be doing a lot of different fun things in today's lesson. We're going to be learning all about bones, so what makes our bones, what bones do for our body, what they're made out of. I'm going to be taking questions during the lesson, and so will my colleagues in the Facebook chat. I'm going to be separating myself for two different screens, so I'm going to be switching from one screen to another screen, back and forth. So I may not see your question right away, but I promise either myself or my colleague will respond to you in the comment section. So everything that we do, every move that we make is thanks to our bones. Our bones are the foundation of our bodies. So I'm just going to switch over to my presentation. So as you can see, these fun skeletons, you may see a skeleton model like this here in your classroom at a museum, or you might see dancing skeletons on Halloween. So as I said, we're going to be doing a few activities. You may see this skeleton skull on my wall. During this lesson, we're going to be putting together a skeleton puzzle as we move from the top to bottom of our skeleton. And as we move from the top to bottom, I'm going to be adding each piece to it. And then at the end, we'll have a full skeleton just like I have right here. And I can promise you, I'm going to be making a lot of jokes during this lesson. I think bones are a really fun topic to learn about. And we all know that there's a skeleton inside all of us. So let's get to know our bones and what they do for us. But before we get started, like I said, I'm going to be making a lot of funny jokes throughout this lesson. And here's one of my favorites. Why did the skeleton go to the party alone? He had no body to go with him. So our skeletal system, as other body systems that we've learned about in some of these live room sessions, work together. So muscles throughout the human body are attached to bones. These nerves around a muscle can signal the muscle to move. So when the nervous system sends commands to skeletal muscles, those muscles contract. That contraction produces movement at the joints between the bones. So with its engineered joints, our skeleton is connected to our muscular system. And fun fact, the skeleton makes up almost 15% of a human body's weight. So 15% of our weight is our skeleton. So here's just a smiling skeleton for you for us to get started. So what do our bones do for us? You can type away in the comments, what do you think our bones do for us? And I'm going to start off. So our bones mainly have 5 functions. So the first one I'm going to touch upon is movement. We dance, we run. Bones provide that attachment from muscle to bone. So when our legs and arms are moving, our muscles are pulling on our bones. A second thing that our bones do is support. So they support our whole body. Without our bones, we would be these piles of goo or slime kind of sliding around through life. They support us, they support our backbone. Our backbone is the main support center for our upper body, at least. Maybe that's where that catchphrase comes from, I got your back. Our bones do have our back in that sense. Our skeletal system has our back. And then my third point is protection. So different bones protect different organs or different organ systems. So when we learn about the skull, you're going to learn about how our brains are protected by our skulls, and our ribs protect our lungs and our heart. Inside the bones, so inside bone marrow, red and white blood cells are formed by that tissue called bone marrow that's found in the center of the bone. and storage. So I know a lot of you have probably heard from your family or your parents, drink your milk, take your vitamins, calcium. So bones store a lot of different minerals such as calcium and different vitamins and other minerals like that. So how many bones do we have? So as adults, we have 206 bones. But when we're born, as babies, or babies now, have 300 bones. So babies' bones form over time because when you're born and you're growing over time, even your skull isn't fully formed when you're a baby because you're continuously growing. So think about it, when a child gets injured or breaks or fractures a bone, they heal a lot faster than an adult would because adult bones are kind of more formed already by that time as they're grown up and they take a lot longer to heal. There's a slower regeneration process. So when we look at this human skeleton, we do see 206 bones, and we do see some teeth. And a big misconception, a lot of people think that are teeth bones. So teeth are not bones. I'm going to touch on that point a little bit later. But teeth are not bones. So again, adults have 206 bones. Babies have around 300 bones. So you have fewer bones now than when you were born. So a few weeks ago we talked about the heart. We talked about the heart in different models. So we split the heart up in two parts, the left and the right. The best way to split the skeleton up, or the best way to learn about the skeleton, in my opinion, is from top to bottom, so from head to toe. But a way to divide the skeletal system is in the appendicular skeletal system and the axial skeletal system. So 80 of our bones are in the axial skeleton, with 64 being in the upper appendicular part, and 62 are in the lower appendicular skeleton. So as I said, we were going to start from head to toe. I'm just going to switch over to my PowerPoint so you can see that a little bit better. So skull bones protect the brain, and they form an entrance to our body. So from our mouths, we're able to consume food, and our skull consists of a few different bones. So the skull is made up of 22 bones. And our skull actually holds the smallest bone, which is in our ear. It's called the stapes. So that bone is one of our smallest bones. So the skull, or our head, is divided into two parts. So the cranial, so that's the back of the head, and our facial bones, the bones that make up our faces. So there's 8 cranial bones that support and protect our brain. So the occipital bone, the parietal bone, the temporal bone, frontal bone, and the ethmoid. So those are the 8 bones that support the back of our head, as you can see in our image. And then there's 14 bones of our facial skeleton. So some of the frontal bones that you can feel on your head are the forehead bones under our eyebrows, so they support and protect our eyes. There's only a few bones in our nose. Most of our nose is actually made up of cartilage. So most of our bones are actually made up of cartilage in our nose. And then we're going to walk down the body towards the neck. So I can show you on my next slide. But the larynx in our throats, or the voice box, is actually composed of 9 cartilages. It's located between the trachea and the root of the tongue. And the hyoid bone provides an anchor point for that. So the movements of that laryngeal skeleton part both open and close our mouths and allow food to enter, water, nutrients, and other things that we need. So we're going to walk a little bit down. I'm going to switch over so you can see here. So we went over our skull, our cranium, which is on the back, and then our frontal, some of our frontal bones. So we're going to start with our clavicles, which are right here, or on your body right here. They kind of stick out a bit. And then we have our sternum. To me, it kind of looks like a tie. And then we have our rib cage. So think of our rib cage as these curved walls that protect our heart and our lungs. So our clavicles are also actually the only horizontal bone that lies in our body. So the only bone that lies facing horizontally that way. So again, we have our clavicle, our collarbone, our scapula, so our shoulder blade, and our scapula kind of holds the shoulder joint away from the rest of our body, and it's actually not that thick. It's almost as thick as one of our little fingers. And I did promise you I would be making funny jokes about bones throughout this lesson. So where do you imprison a bad skeleton? Where do you think you imprison a bad skeleton? I'm going to give it a second for you to type in your answers. I'm going to look over into the comments if I have any comments or questions. I see how much do our bones weigh. And while I'm waiting for some more questions to come in, I did say I would add a piece of our puzzle to the wall. So I added our clavicle, our sternum, and we're going to also talk about our spine. So I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint, and to answer that joke, where do you imprison a bad skeleton, is a rib cage. Oh, I see a lot of comments. So our spine, that backbone, the spine consists of 33 kind of ring-like bones called the vertebrae. So I know that the spine looks like one big bone, but it's actually a lot of little bones. It helps us twist and bend, so bend over and pick things up. And it's divided into a few regions. So our cervical region is kind of those neck bones. The thoracic region is what the ribs are attached to, so kind of that middle region. The lumbar region is that lower part of our back. And then we have our coccyx. I know a lot of people refer to that as our butt bone, and then our sacrum. So you can see this kind of S shape in the spine. That S shape actually acts like a spring, and it flexes, so that's why we're able to jump, kind of reach things, and do a lot of different functions. So our spine, kind of towards that cervical area where our neck is, it holds up our skull and protects our spinal cord. So remember that big point I was making, that a lot of different bones that we have protect these important organ systems. So now we're going to move down back to where our rib cage is. So we're going to talk about our arm bones right now. So right now, I just want you to take a look at our humerus. So that's known as a long bone, and that extends from the shoulder to our elbow. And then those two other bones that you're seeing on screen right under the humerus, the ulna and radius, those are kind of considered our hand bones. So not really our arm bones, but our hand bones. So that's our ulna and our radius. So you can think of radius on top, so kind of like a thumbs up, and ulna on the bottom, so a thumbs down. And a really funny joke I always hear about the humerus, so everyone always says our humerus is our funny bone. So I want to ask you, what did the skeleton say before dinner? And I want to just show you again. There's our radius, and there's our ulna. So I said radius is up and ulna is kind of down, and there on that model you see our humerus bone. So our humerus bone, our clavicles, connects from the shoulder, kind of goes down, and then we're going to reach our hand bones. So what did the skeleton say before dinner, he said bon appetit, and his whole family found that humorous. I see in the comments without our spine, we would be slouching 24/7. Yep, our spines are an extremely protective layer. So are hands. So the hand includes 8 bones in the wrist, 5 bones that kind of form our palm, 14 bones that form our fingers and our thumb. The wrist bones are called carpals. The bones that form our palm are called metacarpals, and our phalanges are the bones of our fingers. So you can see in this image, you have your metacarpals, so that palm, your carpal bones, the bones that make up your wrist, and again, your radius and your ulna. So now we're moving on to our pelvis. And as I'm waiting for some maybe comments or questions to come in, I'm going to add some more pieces to my skeleton puzzle. So we went over the bones in the arm, so I'm going to add both of those pieces to our skeleton puzzle. And then the right side. And then we're ready to move on to our pelvis, or as I like to call it, our dancing bones, because those are the bones that help us dance. So, pun intended, what's the coolest part of a skeleton? The pelvis, because it's hip. So the pelvic girdle protects our bladder, it protects our uterus. So it's kind of a ring of bones that's attached to our vertebrae, so our spine. It consists of the left and right hip bones. Each hip bone is kind of large and flattened, and it forms kind of into those 3 smaller bones. So the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. So female and male pelvises actually are very different in a lot of different ways, because women give birth to children. So the pelvic brim, so kind of like the inner layer, is a lot larger and wider than the males. You kind of have a greater arch in a female pelvis, and the male's pelvis is deeper and a little bit narrower than the females. So I'm looking over to see if I have some comments coming in. How are our bones connected? Our bones are connected through joints, and we'll talk about it. Can you do a shout out to Riley? Hi, Riley. Someone said a joke. What did the skeleton sing about people? You can go ahead and type in the comment and let me know. So we're going to move on to the lower part of our skeletal system. So we have our femur, our patella, tibia, and fibula. So our femur is the largest and actually strongest bone in the body. Then towards your knee, you have your patella, so that's kind of like the ball socket in your knee. Then you have your tibia, so you can kind of think of that being towards the front, and your fibula. So I've heard this joke a lot, and you probably have too. Why does the skeleton always tell the truth? He wants to be honest, so he wants to be honest. Or I've heard another really funny one. What do you call a lying skeleton? A fibula. So a lot of really funny jokes when we're talking about the bones, but it's good because it's a really easy way to learn. So now we're going to talk about the bones that make up our feet. So I did emphasize the importance of our spinal bones, our vertebrae, about the support system, but our feet are what we walk on, we run on, how we bust out all those crazy dance moves that our pelvis helps us do. So right here we have a lot of parts to our foot bones. So we have the tarsals, the metatarsals, and again, phalanges. So the bones of the foot consist of a lot of different pieces. So the phalanges, they form the toes. The metatarsals are what give the foot its arch. So kind of in the hand, it's that palm. The foot has 5 metatarsals and 5 proximal phalanges, and then 5 distal phalanges, and then that big toe that we all have only has 2 phalanges. So I'm going to switch over and I'm going to add another piece to my spinal skeleton. So I'm adding the spine, the pelvis, and then our leg bones. So we went over the skeleton pretty much from head to toe. Now we're going to talk a little bit about bones, the pieces they're made up of, how they work with the muscular system. So tendons are what attaches that bone to muscle. Then you have something called ligaments, and ligaments are what connect bone to bone. So then we have joints. So joints of the body, there's a lot of different types of joints. The first one we're going to talk about is our ball and socket joint. So it's kind of like the round end of the bone that fits snug between 2 different bones. Another example is kind of like a hinge joint. So an example of that is an elbow, a knee. They kind of move in one direction, like a door or a one-way road. So our ball and socket joint is our shoulders. So they move in that ball and socket. And our hinge joints, an example of that is an elbow and a knee. So they move in one direction. So like a door or a one-way road. Then we have our pivot joint. So that's kind of the that's kind of the joints that are resting on a top of another bone. So an example of that is on our necks, our wrists, our ankles. So I'm just looking at the comments because I want to answer all of your questions. So someone said, where do your bones go as you get older? Because I did mention that we have less bones from when we were born. So your bones fuse together. So they don't go anywhere. You don't lose those bones, but they get fused together. So like I said, your skeleton, your skull, when you're a baby, it's kind of in pieces that aren't connected because your brain's growing and continuing to grow. So you don't have that fusion. Same thing with other parts of our body. That's why younger adults or children have more flexible muscles than grown adults do. So we talked about bones, and I just want to emphasize also different bone types. I know I mentioned joints. So bones of the human skeletal system are categorized by their shapes and functions into 5 types. So that femur we talked about is an example of something called a long bone. The frontal bone that I mentioned before is an example of a flat bone. So that's kind of the front portion of our skull. Then we have short bones and irregular bones. So bones that kind of are irregularly shaped, kind of like those spinal bones. So that's an example of the irregular bones. And I'm going to show you some more examples. So flat bones, our sternum is a flat bone. I did say it looks a little bit like a necktie. Our ribs are flat bones. Our cranial bones are flat bones. Some of our short bones are some of the bones that make up our feet and our hands. So the carpals and the tarsals. And besides bones and what they're made out of and how they connect to different organ body parts, I'm seeing a lot of questions and comments on how do bones break, what do bones do. I'm just looking over some more comments here. Someone wants to know why aren't teeth bones? So teeth are mostly made of hard kind of inorganic minerals. So calcium is something that teeth are made out of, and they are not a bone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about issues that occur with bones. So there's a few different issues that occur with our bones, such as fractures. There's a few different bone fractures that occur. We also have dislocations that occur, sprains or swellings of the joints. Arthritis is another big issue. Scoliosis, so that's kind of a curvature of the spine, is something called osteoporosis, which is when over time your bones become very brittle. So over time your bones may become a little bit brittle, and that scoliosis is kind of that curvature of the spine. The dislocation is when a joint falls out of place. And there are a lot of different types of fractures. Although I won't be getting into them into this lesson, there's a lot of different fractures, but I do want to emphasize that when you're younger, it's easier to heal from a broken bone or a fracture than when you are an adult. And a sprain is kind of just the swelling of a joint. So sometimes when you sprain your ankle, you kind of think you injured it very badly, but you may have just sprained it. So I'm going to go through some of the comments now that we're done going over our bones from head to toe. So while I'm going through these comments, I just want to shout out and thank you for joining me today. So our Live from Surgery series is central to the Liberty Science Center's mission, which is to inspire and prepare the next generation of scientists and engineers. So as a nonprofit, Liberty Science Center relies upon donations of a lot of different amounts so we can keep doing this and a lot of different programs. So a special thank you goes out to everyone joining us today, our members, our supporters. You can check us out on Liberty Science Center in the House for more activities, experiments. If you want to make your own skeleton puzzle like I did here, you can do that as well and post some pictures online. Or check us out on any of our social media pages. We go live every single day. So now I'm just going to go through some questions and comments. I see a lot of jokes, which I absolutely love, all the jokes. So I'm just scrolling through, seeing another. So Jalen would like to know, when you get bigger, do you have more or less bones? You have less bones. So you have 206 bones when you're a full-grown adult. What is your biggest bone? So your biggest is the femur. And that's also your strongest bone. What makes bones move the way that they do? So what makes bones move the way that they do, as I went over, I can actually pull that slide back up for you. So what makes bones move together is that connection of nerves and muscles throughout the body. So our nerves and inside of our muscles can signal a command. So it kind of signals that command, and when those muscles contract, since they're covering our bones, that contraction makes the joints move as well. And that's how our bones move. And I'm actually also waiting for an answer from some of my colleagues on the best skeleton name that we're going to choose for today's lesson. Why do babies have more bones? I'm going to answer this because I see it as a common question here. So babies have more bones because they are growing still, so not all of their bones are fused together. So you might see me looking on the screen. I'm just looking through the comments. So someone wants to know, are we going to do this again? So every week we have a different theme for every one of our programs. So recording of the presentation. So this presentation will be recorded. You'll be able to watch it right after we're finished. What happens when your bones break? So there's a few different fractures that occur when your bones break. So I'm just looking. What are teeth made out of? Nails are not bones. So what are teeth made out of? They are made out of calcium and other minerals. At what age do bones start to deteriorate? So bones, usually when you're older, start to deteriorate. I don't know the exact age, but I think it just depends on your body system. But that's why keeping our body systems are very important. Because the more nutrients we provide to our bones, the more exercise we provide to our muscles, the stronger we are. Can you live without some bones? Yes, I know a lot of different surgeries or situations where people may have had a bone removed or replaced. So think about hip replacement surgery or knee replacement surgery when they're replaced with an artificial or metal hip or something that's not a real bone. So someone wants to know, why do bones break? They break because of the pressure put on them. And it looks like we have a winner. So one of my colleagues just messaged me and said that our winner is Skelly the Skeleton. So I absolutely love that name. Skelly will be at the Liberty Science Center, and that's going to be Skelly's official name. So thank you all for contributing your names. I know we're almost out of time for today's lesson, but I will answer any questions you may have, or my coworkers will get back to you in the comment section with some of those answers you may have. A big reason why we do these programs is to encourage you all and the future generation of scientists to pursue a career into the field of science or medicine in general. And I love all of these questions coming in. Do we have bones that are sticking out of our body? So we don't really have bones that are sticking out of our body because we have a lot of protective layers over our bodies and over our bones. Better to answer it that way. So I'm just going to give a few more shout outs. Hi, Samson. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Alicia. Skeleton. I see a lot of really funny jokes in here too. Okay, so it looks like we're getting close to the end of today's session. So I just want to thank you all again so much for joining me today. And please come back and check us out next week, or again, check us out on LC in the House. We go live every single day, Monday through Friday, with a few different programs. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We do have a donation fund on our website, so that helps us run programs like this and offer free content to you. So again, thank you for joining me. Me and my skeleton friend are going to go learn a little bit more about bones so we can respond in these comments and answer some of your questions. So again, thank you all so much for joining me for today's lesson. And again, follow your dreams in science, and I hope that this was able to inspire you a little bit. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you again.